What is up, everybody? Welcome to another Build a Mind podcast. We've been away for a while, so we're going to roll back into it. Hope that everything goes well. Today, Will and I are here with Chris. He is a reseller of Nerdminers. Nerdminers is an interesting little product. So I first heard about it back, I want to say in 2022, and it's just a little teeny tiny USB lottery miner. And at the end of the day, I want to hear from Chris a little bit about it, but I don't think anybody's really made, millions of dollars or maybe even found a block with these nerd miners. But the tech itself is pretty interesting to be able to play around with mining and figure out how mining works. It's a little, like I said, little teeny tiny USB stick that plugs into the computer and quote unquote mines Bitcoin. So yeah, let's get into it. We're going to do a little ad read real quick. So this rip is brought to you by the Mastermind Club, the best way to master the ropes and get a foothold in the world of Bitcoin mining. You'll join a supportive community of like-minded individuals like Will and myself who can help you understand how to build a Bitcoin mine. Will's been building a Bitcoin mine over in, where is it, Will?
It's in Wyoming.
Wyoming. So he's doing an oil and gas stranded well, and I've been playing with some miners over here. But we bring our collective knowledge to the mastermind group, and with Scott Offord's help and a bunch of other people, we're able to give you detailed roadmaps, project guidelines, things like that help you really get a foothold into it. So every week we do a group accountability session, and every second Friday of the month, we do a mastermind deep dive into really critical topics like site development, machine procurement. We are actually doing one next week on not contracts, on I'm blanking on it. I came back from vacation. I'm totally blanking. We're doing it on hosting. So, whether or not you want to be a hosting provider or you want to just run a Bitcoin mine, we're going to really cover that in our deep dive mastermind deep dive topic. So at the end of the day, you'll gain access to these things. And if you want to join the mastermind, go to bitcoinminingworld.com or hit the link in the description and you'll be able to find us there. So with that, we'll get into this episode. We're going to bring Chris up. Chris, welcome to the Build a Mind podcast. We're happy to have you here.
Thanks very much. Pleasure to be here. Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah. So let's see. Chris, you are a reseller of Nerdminers. You're not actually a developer on the product. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. I'm not a developer. I'm kind of slightly techie, but no, I've not actually made any sort of official GitHub contributions as a developer to the project. So yeah, there's me and my colleague Mitch who set up nerdminers.com as a reseller.
Okay, and so I get it. Am I correct that BitMaker is the lead developer on the project?
Yeah, that's right. So BitMaker is the sort of the mastermind behind it, or the lead developer. And then as well as him, I think there's about 26 other contributors to the project. So there's a really nice little community on there. Like massive respect to him for making it an open source project. So I think, it just fascinates me, the whole open sourcing of various sort of miners that's out there now.
Yeah, absolutely. We had recently on Scott from BitAxe, which is another open source developed project. And I can't speak for Will, but I think open source projects are awesome because, you've said already that you're not, a developer, you're not building the project, but it is, in a way, it is your project because you've taken on the open source code. You've started developing a product that can be sold and brought to market. So in a way, it is your baby, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess the idea came out of we saw Nerdminers quite early on. Me and my kind of mate and colleague Mitch. He lives quite local. We've been friends for years. I orange pilled him a few years ago and got him into Bitcoin. So we noticed the project on Twitter and thought, oh, this looks cool. So as soon as I spotted it, I thought, I need to get one of these. So bought the little LilyGo board and flashed one. I was like, look, Mitch, how cool is this? Started tinkering around with it, messed about with a couple of the different sort of firmware tweaks and stuff. But yeah, we noticed that there was a lot of people out on Twitter kind of asking, like, where do I buy one? And back then, I mean, there's loads of people resellers now, but back then we thought there's like not really anyone selling them. People were asking, where can I get one? And people were pointing them to, like Alibaba to go buy the LilyGo board and sort of hear some info on how to flash it. But we were noticing, even though it's quite straightforward to flash, I think people maybe just psychologically don't think we can do it, so don't want to try. So we thought, well, maybe we should just set up a little sort of website and start selling them as just just to put them out there, just to make it easy for people to get. So my friend Mitch, he's a web developer, does like a lot with search engine optimization stuff. So he had a look. He's like, the domain's for sale. Should we buy it? And I'm like, yeah, why not? So registered nerdminers.com as the domain, and then probably within 2 days he'd put the site together. And yeah, I mean, we couldn't believe how wild it went. Sort of, we just set up a Twitter account, kind of said, yeah, we're live. And, if you want a ready flash device, here we are, sort of thing. And yeah, straight away, within days, we'd kind of noticed there's 20, 30 orders coming in the first couple of days. We're like, whoa, this is mad. We were expecting 1 or 2. Yeah, it really kind of took off. So we thought, well, there obviously is kind of a market for people wanting just a simple ready flash device that they can literally just plug in, stick that Bitcoin address in, and away it goes. So that's kind of how nerdminers.com came about. Then since then, as we've made a load of sales, we thought the right thing to do would be make a donation back to the sort of project as kind of as BitMaker. So yeah, he was on, we found the Geyser Fund. He stuck one of those out, probably must have been 4 or 5 months ago now, but yeah, I think we donated 1 million sats his way. So yeah,
heck yeah, that's awesome.
The least we could do, sort of thing, just
That's
to give
great.
a bit back. And then yeah, messaged him and said, hopefully, as we, if we keep selling them, we'll be throwing some more funds your way. So yeah.
Kudos to you guys for having the wherewithal to make sure that you gave back to the creators. And I think that's really one of the only ways that we can make sure open source projects like this stay healthy and stay around. And you gotta kind of be generous like that, especially if you're building on the shoulders of giants, right? And so
absolutely,
that's and I love the part of the story where it's, you just look for a domain, you have an idea, you think, I don't know if this is going to take off, but then you go for it and it takes off. And I'm curious, you said all you did was kind of get a Twitter account and a website and post a couple tweets. Were there any other marketing efforts, or what else did you do to get the word out?
Yeah, not initially. I mean, literally, we were sat having a beer together when we were sort of like, no one's selling these. And Mitch is like, I wonder if the domain's for sale. So yeah, he logged onto, and he's like, it's for sale. I'll buy it. And then the next morning, he's like, should we set up a website? And yeah, so literally, that was literally sat with a beer, bought the domain, and that's how it all started. But yeah, like I said, he spun the website up in a couple of days. I mean, it served its purpose. I mean, if anyone wants to check it out, nerdminers.com. We've kind of since then added lots of blog posts and sort of bits of information and stuff we've kind of discovered along the way. But initially, it was literally just a quick overview of what Nerdminers was. A little line on there, credit to BitMaker, and a link to the GitHub, and then a shop where you could click buy. Just had the Lilygo T-Display S3 boards, which was the original one. I mean, now there's all sorts of different boards available, but we've kind of just stuck to the S3 boards because to us, they seem to just work a treat and seem to be still very popular. But no, back to your question. Like I said, initially website, set up a Twitter account. We did then do a Nostr account, and I think we set up possibly a TikTok account, but we've done very little with it. I mean, we're way too old for TikTok.
Oh man, I can't even get into that stuff half the time. So it's Nostr and Twitter, and even then, man, like it's such a difficult thing to get over, is to go and deal with real people who have real opinions, and not all of them are always correct, I should say. So
yeah.
I love the story of how you guys just launched it on a little bit of a whim, and it was successful. And I think this is what I think newbies to the Bitcoin space or Bitcoin mining need to hear. You just need to scratch that itch and put it out there, and you'll be surprised how things kind of take off. And I think we want to know more about kind of your Bitcoin origin story. But first, before we get into that, would you just kind of lay out what NerdMiner is exactly, and what the creators of the project meant it to be, and what kind of you think it can become?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, the Nerdminer, it's a little ESP. I've got one here. I could hold it up to the camera. Little ESP development board made by Lilygo. This particular one, like I said, you can actually build them on loads of different devices now, but that's the one we stick with. So basically, the developer, I think it started off of, I think it was a fork of another project called the Han Solo Miner. That was on a little board called an M5 board, I believe. So that's what the project was forked from. BitMaker took that and basically redesigned it on this little device. And then what particularly kind of wowed me about it, if you like, or what I really, really liked was just kind of all the cool displays and everything, which was really cool. So, I mean, have you guys seen one of these?
I haven't seen one in person, but I have seen them online.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, on there's like a few different displays you can flick through. I should have got one up and running and I could have showed you, but yeah. So you've got the main kind of display, which gives you like your little Nerdminers hash rate, few other little stats on there. Then you've got a seconds page, which is just a clock, but I mean, I've used one in my kitchen just as my kitchen clock. So then you've got a third display, which is like kind of global Bitcoin network statistics, like the kind of global hash rate, a few bits and bobs on there. And then a fourth screen that they've added quite recently, and the most recent, or not the most recent, but one of the more recent firmware updates, which is the Bitcoin price. So I think that was a really cool addition because it just sits there as a little price ticker, and yeah, you can glance and go, oh dear, Bitcoin's dumping. Oh, yeah, the screens I think are something that really, to me, were so much better than the original Han Solo one. I mean, the Han Solo one was fine, but it was just kind of very just a few lines of, you know, green text on a black screen sort of thing. Like, yeah, so this one made the kind of, I suppose, the graphical user interface so much kind of cooler and so much, I think, so much more user friendly. And just to see all the data on there, I just think it's such an awesome desk toy. Like, I've got one sat at work and one on my desk at home, and like I said, one in my kitchen. I've got them dotted everywhere, but
Nice.
They're a fantastic conversation starter. Like at work, people will come in and go, oh, what's that? And you can say, Bitcoin miner. And then I just think it's like, yeah, it's the perfect segue to sort of talk to them about Bitcoin for 3 hours until they want to run away.
I mean, you called it a desk toy, and I think, but it has this great purpose, like you just outlined. It's a conversation starter, and it really helps to kind of make something that's intangible for so many people a little bit tangible in their real life, and they can then, of course, it's a conversation piece too, and you can take that wherever you guys want to go. But what what's in your opinion, what's the point of developing devices like this that certainly they don't have a lot of utility for mining, you know, I don't know what you'd call it, I guess sufficient loads of Bitcoin, right? But they're more than just the conversation piece. Like, tell us about, you know, I think it's probably best used as a conversation piece, perhaps, or decoration on your desk that's useful in doing something. But yeah, tell us what you think its creators wanted it to be, and what you kind of think is at the spirit behind a device like this.
So certainly from my point of view, and I think I speak on behalf of the developers as well, but I think the main one is kind of the sort of educational sort of approach. I just think it's such a cool learning toy. I mean, there's videos out there on Twitter of them being used in El Salvador, and like where there's a class of people and they're flashing these things, and then like, yeah, I just think it's a really cool kind of educational resource that it's just a cheap, easy way for people to learn. And yeah, you can tinker with them. And I think as well, if you are a bit more sort of tech savvy, there's various like dev branches of the firm where you can mess about with. And I mean, if you get really into it, you can also go contribute to the code and put some changes in and sort of help the project overall. But yeah, education, I think, is the biggest one to me.
Share a couple. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, secondly, probably followed by a great conversation starter and just something to catch people's eye and get them interested. And yeah, and as well, just I suppose just hanging on to the hope and dream that you stand the teeny tiniest chance of mining a block. And I know it's not, it's pretty much an impossibility with one of these things, but yeah,
I think calling it, I've seen it described as a lottery miner. And I think that's a really fun way to kind of look at it. I mean, the odds in some cases are maybe better than the lottery in some cases to mine a block, but what
certainly
are
more fun.
It's more fun,
Definitely
absolutely.
more fun.
Yeah, but as a learning device, what are some key lessons or just practices that users of this device can learn? Like, I think a lot of us Bitcoiners, many of us have families, kids of different ages, and even just, roommates or peers that you want to, explain certain aspects of Bitcoin to. What are some of the lessons or some of the practices people learn from a device like this?
So I think the big one there, I think from a point of view with, like I said, the displays are really cool and it tells you like various statistics. I think it's a really great way of kind of starting to understand like what hash rate is, for example. It'll tell you it's hashing at 77 kilohashes per second. And I guess then people will go, well, what does that mean? And then it takes you down the rabbit hole, I suppose, of, well, okay, what are hashes and what are we actually doing by hashing? So I think that's a kind of really good starting point to get people to just question what mining is, I guess, and what it is actually doing by creating a hash and trying to sort of solve the number found only once with the hash, and you basically find a hash that meets the target difficulty and mine a block. So I guess that's, I think, primarily the best thing about it is just the stuff I suppose the stuff on the display to get people going, well, what does that mean? And what does that mean? Not just obviously the Bitcoin price, everyone kind of knows what the Bitcoin price is, but other bits and bobs, and like puts into perspective like the global hash rate and how massive that is compared to like how tiny your little Nerdminer's hash rate is. I think it's quite a nice eye opener. And as well, I suppose, like I said, for maybe the more tech savvy, I think it's cool if you want to get into a bit of the coding and you want to start messing around with some of the kind of dev branches of the firmware and go, ooh, what does this do? And break things and tinker with things. And yeah. I mean, like I said, there's various people who have just forked the project off in other directions. I think there's one called a leaf miner as well, which is very, very similar, but someone's took the Nerdminer open source code and forked it and made a few tweaks and changes. There's several out there, but yeah, I think if you're tech minded, it's a cool way just to tinker, I guess.
I've actually looked into like all the different lottery miners that are out there, and I have to say that the Nerdminer with its little case and like its display is one of the coolest looking USB miners that you can really get on the market. And I can't remember the exact price. Was it $130 USD, something around there?
So we sell them, I think, for £45. So what's that? About $60,
Oh,
is it, Mitch? So
it's even
yeah,
cheaper. Okay, I was
yeah.
thinking of the BitAxe for some reason, apparently. So
Yes, they're a bit more money, but
my question is, we've seen the BitAxe, we've seen what it does and like the process of mining to a pool and all that stuff, and we've seen images of having 150 of these things just plugged in all over the place and in a room trying to catch a block. Is there a way to tell, or has anybody ever actually gotten a block with one of these Nerdminers before, or is it really just a toy?
I guess it's more of a toy and, like I said, an educational resource. No, to my knowledge, no one's found a block. And I think if someone did, I'd know because it'd be great for sales.
I feel like somebody would say something if they did. I mean, that's an achievement right there.
Yeah, so I mean, public pool is kind of the default pool that when we send them out, that's the one that's just sort of flashed into them, and you can change it. You can find them at other pools. You'd need to find a pool that does accept such a low hash rate. Pools like Brains and some of the others just won't. They'll just reject the tiny hash rate. But there's a few pools out there you can switch to. But no, if you look on public pools website, I mean, Can I share my screen? I was going to say I could
please do. Let me see here.
So if
there should be a way for you to share the screen. You should be able to click present down there at the bottom.
Yes, I see. Yeah. Let me do share screen. Share screen.
Full screen there.
So if I share that screen, so yeah, this is the public pool statistics. So like I said, this is the pool that basically by default the miners, the Nerdminer points to. So yeah, you can see the sort of public pool hash rate on there. But yeah, I always find this interesting. This is the different devices that are being pointed at public pool. So yeah, you can see a load of BitAxes in there, but somewhere down here, where have we got Nerdminers? It's on this. There we go. So yeah, we've got 44,000 Nerdminers online. But then, like I said, if you look at the overall hash rate of them, it's really not that spectacular at 3
Yeah.
gigahash from 44,000 of them.
That number 44,000 is impressive to me. I mean,
it's a lot of low devices. Yeah,
10,000 would have been impressive to me. I'm,
yeah.
you know, I didn't know how many were out there. This is very cool, and that's a lot.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, like I said, when you do look at the hash rate all those are producing, you kind of think that's tiny compared to the likes of the NerdAxe and the sort of BitAxe and stuff. But so I mean, you can see the sort of best difficulties, which tend to be all BitAxes on there. But no, I mean, Public Pool have not found a block today. They've not been around that long. I think they've maybe 8-10 months, but yeah, there's still I guess their kind of niche, if you like, is just the sort of low hash rate miners. But no, I think basically Public Pool at some point I can see we'll definitely find a block, but I think it'd be a miracle if it was found by a NerdMiner.
So can you, obviously you're pointing it towards a pool. Are you able to, set it up and run it off your own node? Is that possible?
Yeah, let me stop sharing my screen. But yes, you are indeed. So if you run an Umbrel node, who was the guy? Was it Steph for Privacy might have made a little Docker, basically like a little bit of a Docker code you could dump on your Umbrel node and basically spin up a fork of Public Pool, because Public Pool is open source as well. So I think he just took their code. Don't quote me on it being Steph for Privacy. It may have been someone else. But yeah, somebody anyway, basically took the Public Pool code, forked it, and made this little quick, easy install for the Umbrel node. So yeah, you can spin up your own pool on the Umbrel node and point your own miners at it, which I see more and more people doing, which is something I really should do. I've got my little node running, but I mean, I'm using a Raspblitz node. I just haven't got around to spinning up the pool on it yet, but it'd be a really cool thing to do, and it's something on my to-do list when I get a minute.
Yeah, I see it as just, one more fork of the rabbit hole that you could head down is, trying to figure out how to connect it to your own pool and your own node and definitely. All that stuff. Verify the hash that you're sending to the network.
Absolutely. And I suppose
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, I guess that's like the sort of the ultimate Bitcoin kind of ethos, if you like, to run your own node, have your own miner, and don't need any pools or anyone. So yeah, that's probably the way to do it if you want to be really serious about it.
I just see I picture in my head, somebody with a little Raspberry Pi with a couple of Nerdminers put into their own pool. They got it all up in one little setup and they're just walking around with it. I don't know if that's actually happened, but I can see it because I'm sure there's Bitcoiners that are crazy out there that do that kind of stuff.
I'm sure it probably has.
How do you know like the majority of where these products are being purchased? Like, what's the type of person that's purchasing this product and where is it coming from? Is it the UK? Is it America?
Yeah, so quite interesting statistics on that. Not really specifically anywhere. We've got quite a few sales from America. We go South America, particularly Brazil, seems to be quite popular. Had a few quite like sort of a noticeable number to sort of Philippines. UK is quite a big one. Across Europe, sort of France, Germany, Netherlands. Up into sort of Sweden, Norway, we've done a few, basically all over the place. I think we've, almost all the kind of bigger countries in the world we've managed to sell them to. When we first got started, we had quite an influx from sort of China, but then the sales sort of dropped off. So I don't know whether possibly with the whole mining being illegal in China, whether the Chinese government put a bit of a crackdown on people visiting the site, but the sales really dropped off from China. But no, it was interesting to see. But no, all in all, kind of everywhere. So we offer free shipping in the UK, whereas if you buy from other countries, since the whole Brexit thing, and there's unfortunately costs us more to post now. So so that's disappointing, but. We ship worldwide, and usually shipping's not too crazy, kind of anything up to about $15 depending on where, but it's usually a bit cheaper than that.
I can't imagine that the shipping's too much. I mean, it doesn't weigh very much. It's a tiny little device, so it's really cool. I think that, you know, it's probably not something that's going to be decentralizing the mining network. And I know that decentralization is a big topic today, but
Yeah.
I do think personally, you know, the education aspect is going to play a huge role in that. And education around Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin in general, is what decentralizes is the biggest decentralizing force in my opinion, because once you understand like why we should be decentralizing the pools, why we should be decentralizing the machines and the hash rate and all these different things, then you really start to take action as a Bitcoiner and all that stuff. So could you talk about that a little bit? Like what is the process of someone buying the NerdMiner, getting it, learning through the education, and what do they step up to?
So yeah, good question. I think, like you said, I think the decentralized point is really important and something that concerns me about sort of Bitcoin mining in general. I also do totally agree that, yeah, unfortunately, I guess the nerd miner probably doesn't have enough hash rate that even if there were millions out there, it wouldn't really make a significant impact. But no, I think, like you said, people learning about mining and just as taking a first step, I guess, you know, if you've discovered Bitcoin and you understand that there's this concept of mining on how new Bitcoins are kind of added into the sort of system, I think the nerd miner is a really great sort of budget way of just getting one and go, oh yeah, now I'm mining Bitcoin. And even if, like I said, not to any reasonable sort of scale, I think, like you said, it probably it gets people kind of started, if you like. I think to get a nerd miner, sort of go, oh yeah, that's really cool. Look at the sort of, you know, begin to understand what the statistics are showing you. And then I've spoke to a lot of people who kind of get the mining bug, if you like, and think, ooh, no, I need more hash rate. So, you know, they end up with 10 nerd miners and then go, oh no, I need more hash rate. So to me, the next natural kind of evolution is the BitAxe probably as another really cool open source mining project. And I know recently BitMaker's also been tinkering with the NerdAxe, which is kind of like a hybrid of the two, if you like. It's the BitAxe open source project with kind of basically where you can plug your NerdMiner board into it, reflash the firmware on the NerdMiner, and you've got a NerdAxe. So you've got the best of both worlds. You've got a bit more hash rate from the BitAxe and the actual ASIC chips, but with the really cool statistics kind of shown on the screen that you've got from the NerdMiner. So
that's interesting because I'm pretty sure if I recall right, Scott was telling us that you can't point the NerdMiner to your own pool or to a different pool. I think it was set up to where it's only pointing to nice hash. I think it was what it was. I could be completely wrong on that, but if I'm correct, then the NerdAxe allows you to connect to your own node and really gives you the opportunity to, you know, mine that block yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've not actually played with a BitAxe, so yeah, I couldn't comment on that. I would have thought you could, but I honestly don't know. But certainly, like I said, you certainly can with the NerdMiner. So yeah, the NerdAxe I think is a really, really interesting project, and noticed a few of them for sale, and it's kind of yeah, something me and my mate Mitch are having conversations about. Like, ooh, I wonder if that's something we should consider. I think the kind of thing that puts us off a little is just the workload, because we both sort of have a 9 to 5, you know, fiat job, if you like. So this is kind of a sideline project, and it's took off like crazy. So just a little bit reluctant to bite off more than we can chew, but.
Boy, do I know how that feels, biting off too much you can chew.
I mean, this is how you get started though. You know, you have an idea, you throw up a website, you enjoy this early success that might be surprising, but it's small. And then, like you said, the product itself kind of gets people, you know, interested in, oh, they need more hash rate. You know, the bug has bit them. And then, you know, who knows, maybe they start home mining or they step up to multiple ASIC rigs. You know, and that's a great kind of way to orange pill people and just get them. And that does support the decentralization of the network when you learn about it enough to kind of take your own steps toward it. And so I think that's a huge value that this kind of thing brings. And I would just say, Chris, be ready, because we all, you know, we have no indications that another bull run isn't on the way, even though the price is down a lot in the last few days or a couple weeks. Even.
I'm not concerned. Like you said, I think 100% there's definitely another bull run on the way.
Right. So there's a flood of people that's coming Chris. Get ready. Let's try to help you get some customers to crash your site. And
fingers crossed.
Absolutely. I think the best thing about the education is you buy one of these as a gift for somebody. Maybe they're not a Bitcoiner, maybe they're a pre-coiner. Somebody who's never really touched the space, but somebody who's interested in learning new things. I think kids are an especially great place to send these to. Buy one for your kid, buy one for your nephew, kind of situation, and be like, hey, plug this in, figure out what it does, and come back to me when you have some questions, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very true. And I suppose as well, like I said about the pools, you can actually fire them at a pool called Unmineable, and you can literally make a couple of sats every few days. But I think, if you give one to a kid, a couple of sats every few days just to see it ticking into your Bitcoin piggy bank or whatever might be like, yeah, this is cool. I think you're right. I think they're a great starting point. As well, I do a lot with sort of the UK Meetup scene, and I was chatting to someone fairly recently at a Meetup, and they'd had a NerdMiner running for a couple of months, and I spoke to them recently. They're like, "Oh, I've bought an old S9 off eBay." I was like, "Cool, why?" They're like, "I don't know, I just wanted more hash rate and want something to play with." I was like, "Oh, wicked."
Yeah, we definitely want to hear more about your involvement with the local meetup scene in the UK and the city that you're in and what that activity is like. But before we do that, we want to talk about a kind of larger meetup. It seems like it's always conference season in the Bitcoin industry. There's just events all the time. And of course, we are putting on an event here this fall in Minnesota, in the Midwest of the United States. And so we're, excited to present the Mining Conference is what the name of it is. It's again this fall in Brainerd, Minnesota, which is a very beautiful vacation spot in the northern Midwest around a lot of beautiful lakes. And we're going to talk about how, the future of the Bitcoin mining space there. We've got a great amount of industry leaders and thought-provoking speakers and builders from all over the Bitcoin mining industry already signed on to join us for the event. And this is a great place for you to gain exclusive insights, forge valuable connections, and network professionally with people in the space and explore all the potential that Bitcoin mining has to offer the world and your business and just your interests. So participants at the Mining Conference can also get a one-day Build a Mine crash course at the event. Normally, we do a multiple-day kind of deep dive in-person boot camp of sorts. And we're going to host one of these in a compressed format on a day surrounding the Bitcoin, the Mining Conference in Minnesota. And so it's a fraction of the cost. It's only one day instead of the usual 3-day long boot camp. So don't miss out on that opportunity to join us at the conference and join the boot camp. So mark your calendars. The event will be this fall, September 27th through 29th. And let's build the future of Bitcoin mining together at the Mining Conference. You can go to theminingconference.com or also bitcoinminingworld.com to get more information. So yeah, tell us about meetups. I mean, I think conferences are a great way for especially folks who are new to the space to start networking, meet people, and just explore the landscape. But meetups are much more accessible than conferences. You probably have one not far from you. And that's how I got started in the space like 12 years ago, was starting meetups and going to meetups. So tell us about yours and the town you're in, if you don't mind doxing that, and share kind of what's the history of your meetups and how often you meet and kind of what opportunities that's presented for you and your friends and so on.
Yeah, cool. Okay, yeah, happy to. I mean, the Bitcoin meetup scene in the UK, it seems to have just been kind of completely blowing up recently. I think probably about a year ago is when I sort of really started to notice that. But I mean, a little bit about the sort of local meetup that I run. So I'm in Nottingham in the UK. There was a Nottingham meetup very early on before I got into Bitcoin. A guy called Roger used to run the sort of Nottingham meetup, and I think we're talking back in like 2014, 15 maybe. But that was before anyone would have really heard of Bitcoin. So I think it kind of just died off and all went quiet. And then, yeah, probably about a year ago, I mean, I got into Bitcoin sort of 2016, then did what a lot do and went off on a bit of a shitcoin journey, and then kind of went full circle around back into Bitcoin. But yeah, probably about a year ago, I thought, it'd be really cool to kind of get a meetup going again. And there wasn't anything in Nottingham. And I noticed there was a couple in sort of surrounding cities, but a lot down London and stuff were popping up. So yeah, I thought, I wonder if we could revive the Nottingham meetup. So I mean, at the time I sort of set up the Nottingham meetup, I didn't even know there was an original one. So Roger, the original kind of host, he contacted me and said, "Oh, I used to run one. Do you want to join forces?" sort of thing. So yeah, got chatting and we thought, yeah, meetup could be cool. So then once we started doing a bit more digging, like I said, we realized actually there's quite a sort of scene really sort of starting up in the UK. So there's a little project called bitcoinevents.uk, which is kind of a website just he does it for free. A guy called Simon, who I've made friends with through that. He just basically tries to put all the Bitcoin UK, all the UK Bitcoin meetups kind of into a weekly newsletter and stick them on a website. And yeah, there's loads out there. I think if you were prepared to travel, you could pretty much find yourself a Bitcoin meetup every week. So yeah, it's kind of going from strength to strength. But certainly the Nottingham one, we started just in kind of a couple of local pubs, didn't really have a set venue. But then about 6 months ago, we managed to get the local football team accepting Bitcoin. So they take Bitcoin now at the bar and or on the website for all merch for match day tickets. They love it. So yeah, we were totally.
What level of football is that? I'm sorry to interject. I'm just curious. I'm not a huge football fan, but I love kind of learning about the different levels and leagues and stuff. So tell us, maybe people can support them even though they're not in Nottingham. They can support this other football team. We know of a few football teams in the UK that are associating themselves with Bitcoin. So go ahead and tell us more.
So football wise, I'm going to be totally honest. I haven't got a clue. I've got no interest in football at all. It came about because my mate Mitch, he's a big football fan. So he's been a supporter of the local club for quite a while. So he was kind of how the thing came about with Orange Pilling Football Club and getting them on board. So yeah, I could have done with him on the call to explain that side of it for me.
I take it they're not a Premier League team.
No, they're not Premier League. I think
Do you know the name? Just so that our audience might be curious. I don't know.
So yeah, the name's Carlton Town Football Club. So I believe they might be slightly higher in leagues than Real Bedford. I guess Real Bedford, the Peter McCormack, his team, they're obviously the one everyone's heard of. I think as leagues go, they might be like possibly one league above, but no, they're still fairly kind of low league stuff. So yeah, but no, like I said, because they started accepting Bitcoin, they had like a little function room there. We're like, oh, could we use your function room as our meetup venue? And that's working really well. So yeah, every month we've got a set venue. We go down, spend some sats at the bar, have a few beers, and we usually try and get someone to do like a bit of a talk about something. Just one of the kind of local guys who come down. Guy called Darren, goes by the Crypto Donkey on Twitter. He's super techy. He's a developer and always blows people's minds with the complexities of it. So no, he's done a few talks for us, which are really cool. Then we've had a few other guest speakers in doing just all sorts of different kind of elements of Bitcoin. And yeah, it's good. It's working well.
I love those crossovers. Go ahead, Trevor. Yeah, I just love these crossovers of Bitcoin and sports. I think it's a great way to get Bitcoin out there. Go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah,
I was gonna ask, like, what are the kinds of people that you see come into these meetups? I know that I've seen a couple of the meetups in my local area, and you get a lot of like just random people that you wouldn't ever expect would be interested in Bitcoin or be curious about it. So I'm curious to know, like, who's showing up at these meetups, how many people are showing up, and what is the kind of reaction that you're getting?
Yeah, cool. Good question. So it kind of surprised me as we've been kind of running them, and I mean, recently they're growing quite nicely. We started off just 3 or 4 people at the kind of the first ones. Now on average we have about 20. I think the most we've had is about 26 people at one of our meetups, which is it's pretty good.
That's a good turnout.
Yeah, it's not bad. I'd say we're probably got to be one of the bigger ones after some of the London meetups. I've seen those guys kind of pull into the sort of 30s for a kind of monthly meet. But yeah, I think as UK meetups go, I reckon we're one of the bigger ones, which is pretty cool. But no, the sort of demographic of people who turn up, I think, is really interesting. Yeah, I guess probably more male than female, but I think the thing that kind of interests me most is the sort of age group. I sort of thought it'll probably be all kind of, young to middle-aged men, but no, I mean, there's some guys who go much older, probably like, yeah, late 60s, early 70s. We've got a few people. And I think different people come at it from different angles, which I think is really interesting. So I think some are there for the technology, some are there kind of for more the kind of economics and monetary sort of side of Bitcoin. Some are there, I guess, just for the price, but we soon convince them it's more important than just the price. So yeah, no, it's really interesting. I mean, I went to a Sheffield meetup several months ago, but now I got chatting to a woman there, and I think she said she was 81. I was like, wow, that's like completely not the sort of what I'd imagine as your kind of everyday Bitcoiner. But yeah, I mean, I think the technology side of it confused her and scared her a little, but she really, really grasped the kind of importance of kind of the monetary policy side of it, which is totally what she kind of thought was so important. And yeah, just like I said, I find it fascinating, the different people that kind of take an interest.
I love Bitcoin because Bitcoin encompasses so much. It's not just a technology. It's not just a new monetary standard. It's really just dipping into its tentacles into every part of society, economics, the macro, all of it. And so you find people end up with different touch points, but then they're like, oh man, like what is this Bitcoin thing? Where can I find more about it? And that's where these meetups really come in clutch, because it's like, okay, well, you want to learn more, you go to the people who talk about Bitcoin. I don't have a meetup in my small town, and I need to get time to really start one and build one up. But I walk around and, I tell people what I do, and they start asking me, and then the conversation just starts diving from there. And it's like, man, like if I had a meetup in this town, like, and I really could get some traction, like that would be the place where people would want to go to find out more about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you're right. And I think what I particularly enjoy is I kind of think just every Bitcoiner I speak to, I just find I've instantly have a connection. I relate to them, even if it's, even if you're not chatting about Bitcoin, I often just find that they kind of got the same mindset and just like, I don't know, I suppose
It's wild. It's interesting. Just yesterday, it's a holiday here in the United States, Independence Day yesterday, and so I'm hanging out at a friend's place who lives on a lake, and they have, of course, many guests, and I was just surprised at how often the conversation revolved to Bitcoin and back again, and it was never because of me. Like,
good for you, Will.
Well, yeah, right. Those years, I used to drive that conversation quite a bit in the years past, but not so much lately, just, but yeah, and everyone who talked about it would then share kind of maybe some of their social views or some of their personal goals, or some of their business goals. And just like you said, Chris, like, I just find, wow. So I find myself so aligned with a lot of these things that people are saying, who I wouldn't have known maybe we could be friends like that or see eye to eye on so many different things if it weren't for the fact that Bitcoin drove the conversation to some of their thoughts on these, these different personal views and business views. So you're right. It has this strange way of like bringing like-minded people together, and helping people remind each other how similar we all are, or how our focuses are closely aligned. And what can be done with that is kind of up to the imagination, but it's a really encouraging feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I find as well, I find Bitcoin is generally, even if your views don't entirely align, if you've got a difference of opinion on certain things, I find Bitcoin is just so much more deep thinking and open-minded to, well, like, I don't agree with you, but why do you think that? I just find you can have a conversation, whereas some people, it's like, no, you're wrong. And you're like, why am I wrong? And just no, you're wrong.
Bitcoiners like to argue, but we like to find out what the other argument is about. Definitely. Instead of just like, shoving that argument to the side and saying, I'm right. It's like, no, like, why do you think you're right? And I'll tell you why I think I'm right. And maybe we can meet in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I think that is so true.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter where we're from either. I mean, like if that little barbecue by the lake had included guests from the UK or even other countries, I'm sure we would all still have a blast and get along. And like
100%.
Bitcoin would reveal all these other things that we all similarly like as well, you know?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I think the meetups are so powerful, and just, you know, at bringing people together and at opening opportunities for, you know, professional development. I think certainly is one of the biggest things that comes out of Bitcoin meetups is professional development and building your network, but also making new friends. You know, it's hard to make friends in this digital age for adults. It tends to be hard, especially post COVID. Things are a lot lonelier for lots of people, and so getting out there in Bitcoin meetups is huge, and conferences as well. But meetups are really where it all starts. And so I think that's great. We love to talk about kind of the philosophical and the deep kind of thinking and the deep feelings and personal viewpoints.
It's my favorite.
It's mine too, honestly. And I think I want to do that with you as well, Chris. But before we do that, we've had kind of an interesting week, an interesting few weeks in terms of the Bitcoin space. I mean, you know, when we're recording this, it's actually July 5th. I mentioned Independence Day was yesterday. So this recording will come out in several days or so. But we've had, you know, maybe while a lot of people were out partying in the United States in the past 24 hours, they missed it. But the price is down bad.
56,430 is what I'm seeing right now. We are down bad.
And it touched, I think, 53.5.
Yes, it did.
And so, you know, that's putting miners under incredible stress. And I'm curious, you know, I have some views on this, and I'm sure Trevor does, but I'm curious, Chris, are there a lot of miners in your meetup community, or miners that you are more sophisticated than just the hobbyists who might want to purchase a NerdMiner, who are kind of sharing what their plans might be and how they're going to navigate the next couple days, couple weeks, couple months? We don't know. With the prices where they are, and very few miners can be profitable post halving in this environment. So what are your thoughts on that? And maybe, you know, Trevor and I can share some insights as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'd be keen to hear your thoughts. But I mean, most of the miners I know are more kind of hobbyist miners, and you know, people who are running a amp miner to heat their kitchen or something up. I don't really know anyone close, or don't know anyone well who's mining on any sort of scale. I suppose it's probably due to the electricity costs in the UK. I mean, unless you can get cheap electricity, mining in the UK is kind of like a no-go anymore, I think, for most, unless you've got access to some really cheap renewables or something. But I guess from sort of seeing stuff on Twitter and watching videos and bits and bobs, I get the impression that, like you said, not many miners are profitable at the moment, and I think it's probably quite worrying times. I suppose, I don't know. I suppose they've got electricity bills to pay, and it does kind of scare me that, like, how long can you be unprofitable for before you need to go, enough's enough, I can't do this anymore. I mean, I'm still very much a Bitcoin bull and an optimist, and I'm confident the price will go back up. And I kind of imagine maybe a lot of miners are hanging on to the sort of same thought, which I genuinely think probably is the right decision. But it must be scary times. If you're, like you said,
even if they, you know, even if they feel like we feel, I think the three of us agree, you know, we're at the precipice of another big wave of adoption, a big price expansion, and network expansion, obviously, at the same time. And so we're, you know, people hopefully position themselves for that. But even those who really put effort into positioning for this next wave of adoption, then, you know, the next bull run, they're in perilous times right now with the prices where they are and the conditions how they are. And summer in the northern hemisphere is hot right now. So mining is, you know, people have to dial back the hash rate just to deal with heat. And now they're probably dialing back a lot of hash rate to deal with the, you know, the lower prices and being unprofitable. So from what I understand, I think, you know, we're the mine that I'm working with and you know, that have started up in Wyoming, it's very hot, it's very dusty, it's very desert like in those conditions, but we have good fans, good filters, all that stuff's running well. However, we don't have a ton of machines up right now, which has been frustrating for a long, many months for our side. But we're not changing anything really, because we're in this unique situation where our energy cost is so low because it's stranded and waste energy. So that's fortunate. And we wish we could be online we have a lot more machines right now sitting unplugged, which is, we're trying to solve that problem. But yeah, a lot of folks probably take machines offline, dial down the hash rate, down clock their machines to, save the machines. And they probably should take advantage of this opportunity with prices down, if they have to unplug a bunch of machines to kind of stem the tide, to do a bunch of maintenance on machines that they haven't maintained for maybe several months, that have been running really hard and fast. And now is a really good time to do that maintenance and basically optimize your setup. If you can withstand, let's say 1, 2, 3 months. Most miners, I think, could probably last a month at least of being underwater for a few weeks. But anything longer than that, I'm sure it makes them nervous and leads to people unplugging or maybe even shutting down their businesses. I mean, I have talked to one acquaintance of mine who did decide to shut down recently, and he's very glad he did, because he kind of just finished his unwind like 1 month ago. And so he's extremely happy with where the prices are, because he's not spending money on power bills, and he has a little bit of cash because of liquidating his mining operation. And so he did, buy a bunch of Bitcoin when it was down really low late last night. I spoke with him earlier. But one thing he mentioned is, take the time to optimize your mining farm. Take the time to maintain your machines. Make sure that, you have a good relationship with your source of energy, whether it's a utility company or whether it's an oil and gas producer, as in my case and others, and just really focus on, battening down the hatches. It's kind of a storm you have to weather. And this happens a lot, where we've had this supply crunch that hit, 4 months ago or so, 3 months ago. And all of a sudden, most folks should expect, well, wow, the supply is down so much that prices should just respond by going up. And that hasn't happened yet. So that can be frustrating for a lot of people. It still, I believe strongly, will happen. But yeah, that's kind of something I'd share with the audience, is take the time to make sure that you are optimizing your whole setup and just try to survive. And if you have the opportunity to renegotiate prices, do so. I know that's probably not the case for many or most, but that's a kind of a good approach. I don't know, Trevor, have you heard from any miners and what they're doing to try to survive during this?
Not really. I mean, I would say you and Scott and John are the only miners that I really know at this point. All I've got to say is, the market can remain unstable longer than you can stay solvent. So that's something that's very important. I've actually shut down my miners for the moment, because I'm a pleb miner, so I mine for heat. I mine for heat reuse and those kinds of things. And right now, like Will was saying, it's starting to get really warm. So I don't need that heat. In fact, if I keep any more heat in my house, my wife's going to kill me. So I shut everything off at that point. But yeah, no, I'm just seeing, from people on Twitter and, Nostr and those kinds of things, people are having to make difficult decisions in that regard, trying to, lower their power rate or lower their hash rate in order to remain solvent.
Yeah, it's a tough time right now, being so hot in the summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Power costs have been going up around the world and probably will continue to do so, even though I'm a firm believer there's abundant energy sources out there, and and Bitcoin is actually helping this, but power prices should be coming down around the world thanks to Bitcoin and thanks to technology and innovation and being able to harness a lot of the incredible sources of energy we have around the world. But politically and regulations and just the economic situation around the world, especially in the West, is making that very difficult. But yeah, I'd love to kind of shift gears again back to you, Chris, and maybe your Bitcoin origin story, or maybe just some of these deep viewpoints you have. And I know Trevor has a bunch of really good questions to get at the heart of these things, of how you feel about Bitcoin to your core and Bitcoin mining and what inspires you about it. So I'll just turn it over to Trevor for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I love the philosophical questions. It really gets at the heart of what people are thinking. And as somebody who's, you know, a reseller of a small product, I know that it's not putting out a bunch of hash rate, but it is a product in the Bitcoin space. And it's important because we need as many of these products, as many of builders and developers in the space as possible. So, you know, I'm curious. I know that our listeners are curious. What keeps you up at night in Bitcoin? You know, it can be Bitcoin, it can be Bitcoin mining, it can be, you know, the overall landscape of things. But I want to know, you know, like, what is that thing that, you know, when you're, you know, in your sleeping mode and you're just kind of like letting your brain go, like, what is that thing that really freaks you out or makes you think like, man, this has got to change, and maybe we can build a product to help that?
So yeah, I guess couple of different things, but I think something we've already touched on is the kind of centralization around mining. If we're going to kind of approach the question from a mining point of view, certainly the centralization points are yeah, big concern to me, especially kind of following news that seems to have come out recently around pools and stuff. You kind of think, oh yeah, you know, there's several big pools out there, but yeah, from what I've read and seen, it turns out a lot of the big pools might all be actually the same pool, same people running the show. So yeah, it does worry me that the idea that a pool, or you know, a very small kind of handful, a couple of pools, for example, could end up with like the majority of the hash rate. Yeah, that concerns me quite a bit. What else sort of concerns me about Bitcoin? Good question. Yeah.
I think something that concerns me really quick, just to jump in, is the election here in the US. You know, I think ultimately Bitcoin doesn't care, right?
Yeah.
But in the short term, which for us can be a whole election season,
long time. A long time.
It could really change things. I mean, just thinking of, for example, you know, the United States holds the largest amount of Bitcoin from any sovereign country, and the decisions of its administration, based on whoever wins, you know, I'd love to see the United States. I'm feeling patriotic because Independence Day was yesterday, but I'd love to see our country hang on to those coins and do something smart with them for the body politic, for the nation. And so that kind of was keeping me up at night last night when I was thinking about Germany selling off 50,000 BTC. And I was thinking of, you know, the sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East and the United Arab Emirates, you know, are positioning to buy, or probably already are, you know, loads of Bitcoin and shift the balance of power to the East, which we've been talking about, you know, in the geopolitical context for a number of years now, that is kind of taking place. And that's mostly a function of those countries trying to become innovative and competitive, but it's also a function of the West being weak, I think, and it's certainly the United States being weak. So those are things that I think are on my mind. Sorry to interject, Chris.
That's all right, no problem at all. No, I totally agree with you. I think you're right. I think you can see that certain countries around the world are just taking the opportunity to buy it, like there's no tomorrow sort of thing. And yeah, like you said, I do think the West are making a big mistake. I think you're right. America, UK, most of Europe just don't seem to be interested. And yeah, it worries me that they're missing a trick. But yeah, we'll see.
I'm hopeful. Go ahead, Chris. Yeah.
Oh no, no, after you. The other one was a slight kind of going slightly
off
topic.
Well,
There's
I'm
something
hopeful.
Else that keeps me up at night. Go on.
Yeah, no, bring up that point, but I'll just kind of close on this political side of the topic with, you know, we've heard some things come out of Trump's mouth that are very pro Bitcoin, and in a very smart way. So there are smart people who are, I believe, true blue Bitcoiners in his ear, kind of putting these talking points and messaging points in his mouth, so to speak, or in his speechwriter's brains to get on paper and teleprompters for him to read, which is exciting. It's exciting. However, I mean, I don't know. I'm jaded. I'm cynical when it comes to politics. I have been since I was, a preteen, and I don't trust any of these promises, to actually come to fruition. Although the sound of these particular promises coming from Trump are so encouraging. It's the kind of stuff we only dreamed about and postulated in kind of wild scenarios on message boards 10 plus years ago. These are the things that are being talked about now, and that's kind of cool. That's very encouraging. But again, I don't trust it completely. I'd really want to see it, but I don't trust it.
Well, we need to see it to believe it. But at the end of the day, I think that the Overton window is really starting to shift, because whether Trump, gets elected, Biden gets elected, people are talking about Bitcoin. And, when a presidential nominee goes on TV and talks about Bitcoin and talks about, all these different things, it's like it really puts in people's eyes, puts it in people's ears, like, what is Bitcoin? What is this thing? Why is he talking about? Why is it so important? And so I'm with you, Will. I'm jaded too. I've been through 2 election cycles as a voter, and both election cycles I've watched it just deteriorate, get worse. And now I'm a Bitcoiner, and I'm just going, what the hell are we doing? Like, what's going to happen? But I'm hopeful, man. I'm hopeful that at the end of the day, people are going to really come together and pull us out of this mess.
Bitcoin brings us together. Bitcoin
Exactly.
does that. And that's what it did for me anyway. It made me feel like, whatever happens in politics ultimately doesn't matter as long as this thing succeeds. And so far it is. And so, Chris, tell us the other thing that's keeping you up at night. You were about to.
So the other one that bothers me, and it's kind of Bitcoin related, is the kind of attack on privacy. I think that's something that concerns me. I mean, from the Bitcoin kind of stance, I guess the recent shutdown of like Samurai Wallet and basically how they've thrown the developers in jail for, in my opinion, doing very little wrong. But I kind of just think it's a tool at the end of the day, and it just worries me. Like, there just seems to be this kind of like global kind of attack on privacy generally. I feel at the moment it just feels like all privacy preserving tools are just being sort of like cracked down on. I mean, the chat control thing in Europe that luckily doesn't seem to have gone through, but that was like bonkers.
I was worried about that.
Me too. That really did keep me up at night. I just thought, if that's like terrifying, the implications if that's passed of just ending kind of end-to-end encryption. I guess that's it really. That's the other thing that keeps me up at night. And I think as well, it's just I feel like people just like don't seem to care anymore, and it worries me that there's just like a kind of a culture of people who just think privacy's dead, and it shouldn't be. In my opinion, it should be very important. And it just feels like I'm sometimes shouting at the wall when I'm telling people to preserve and protect their privacy. They're like, well, I've got nothing to hide. I'm like, no, you're missing the point.
It's not the point. That's not the point.
I could rant about this for ages, but no, that's the other thing that keeps me up at night.
Yeah, those are definitely 2 things that are very important. And I think that more people need to pay attention and understand that we have a real shot here at making a difference. We have a real shot at making people's lives mean something. But when we obfuscate the responsibility and we just say, oh, well, I've got nothing to hide, at the end of the day, like, you're contributing to the problem because you're not part of the solution.
Yeah, I think you're totally right with that. 100%.
All right, so we've got a couple more minutes left. I've got one more deep question for you, and I love this question because we always get different answers from different people, and then we'll close out on this. What does Bitcoin mean to you?
So to me, I think the most important thing that Bitcoin kind of is to me is, I guess, just the world-changing potential. I think maybe not so much for the West, but I think there's people around the world who I could just see it could do so much for, just to pull people out of poverty and just to make the world a fairer, sort of better place. I think it gives, people who maybe for whatever reason, whether it's kind of a authoritarian government or whether it's, controlling partner or anything. I just think there's so many people that Bitcoin could give financial kind of independence and freedom to. To me, that's the most beautiful thing about it, the kind of, humanitarian side, I guess.
That's beautiful. It's, Bitcoin is changing the world and it's changing hearts and minds of people all over. And it really comes from number go up, but also it comes from the ability for people to protect their energy, their time. Time is the most scarce resource that we have. And with Bitcoin, no one can steal that from you. No one can take it from you.
Yeah, totally.
So, well, Chris, this was a great conversation. I think that we provided a lot of value to our audience. Where can people find you, and how can they reach out to you if they want to do that?
Okay, cool. So from the NerdMiner side of you, so our website is nerdminers.com. You can buy yourself a NerdMiner on there, and we're just at NerdMiners on Twitter or X. So yeah, that's the NerdMiner side. I guess from the kind of Bitcoin Meetup side, check out if you're more for the UK audience, but bitcoinevents.uk, great place to find your local meetups, and bitcoinnottingham.org is the Nottingham Meetup website.
Awesome. So I'll make sure that those get in the description of the video for people. One last piece of housekeeping that we want to do. So every single one of our guests that has come on so far has gotten this, and we're going to give it to you as well. I know that you're in the UK, so it might be a little bit more difficult for you to make it, but if you can, we'd appreciate it. And if you can't, we've got 2 tickets for you to give away to somebody at your meetup, or somebody on Nostr or Twitter. So I'll make sure that I reach out to you. We'll get you your tickets. You're getting 2 of them. Like Will said in the middle of the show, this is a great opportunity for people who want to get into the Bitcoin mining space and want to meet people, make relationships, network, all that kind of stuff. Like, this is one of the best places to do it. And it's Bitcoin mining solely. I mean, we're not talking about shit coins. We're not talking about, anything unrelated to Bitcoin,
maybe as they pertain to Bitcoin mining, but
exactly
not much else. It's purely mining focused conference, theminingconference.com. And we'd love for you to make it if you can. But if you can't, connect these 2 tickets with anyone interested in your circle, in your orbit, at the meetup or whatever, or use them as giveaways on your website for Nerdminers. Whatever kind of cool ideas you could come up with. But the 2 free tickets are yours to enjoy, or to
Amazing.
give to someone else who can enjoy them. So yeah, we'd love to meet you in person, Chris.
Yeah, and again, that date is September 27th through the 29th.
Cool. Yeah, brilliant. Yes, like I said, I would love to get over there. So yeah, fingers crossed. If not, I'll certainly find the tickets a good home.
Awesome. Well, with that, guys, this has been the Build a Mind podcast. I'm just asking everyone, if you enjoyed this, if you really like the content, please share it. Share the signal, the Bitcoin orange signal. Like, comment, subscribe. Hit us up on Fountain. Make sure that you send us a comment over there, and we'll make sure that we send you some sats back in that aspect. But yeah, with that, guys, we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes, thank you. Great chatting, guys. Thanks a lot.
Please note, the Build a Mind podcast provides information for general educational purposes only. This information should not be construed as legal, financial, or investment advice. We do not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information presented, and we encourage you to consult with a professional advisor, legal advisor, and/or financial advisor before making any financial decisions. The Build a Mind podcast and its affiliates are not responsible for any losses incurred as a result of using the information provided.